up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of Kickin' It with Killboy. I'm your host, Daryl Cannon. This is my lovely co-host,
Lori Cannon.
And we thought we'd start things off today here at the state line, North Carolina, Tennessee. This is where the Tail of the Dragon technically begins and goes north. There's some significance to this area, so Lori's going to fill you in on some of that. What you got?
So if you tuned in to the Cletus McFarland RV Challenge and watched that video, he took note of what looks to be gates or gate posts here behind us. And today we're going to tell you why and when those were put in. But we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. For now, let's go through a drive through the Dragon. So this is going to be our first rolling or mobile podcast. It's going to be interesting.
Fancy. We've got it all done up like Top Gear style. I have really good visual line of sight on everything, so we kept everything in Lori's face. But that's the one you want to look at anyway. So.
And I don't need to see out front.
So we heard that they were doing some road work today, so we're going to show you that in a little bit. If they're still out here, they were clearing some ditches. And maybe affecting the flow of traffic a little bit. But what else we got going on? It's been happening.
So it's been an interesting couple of weeks on the Dragon.
Geographically and naturally.
Yeah, so I think it's safe to say that the Dragon got shook. Quite literally.
Got rocked.
Got rocked, man. And what we're meaning by that is on Saturday, May 10th, is the first ever earthquake that I have ever felt. I was at home, I wasn't at the Dragon. And it was the rattle that was felt through many states. But Daryl, unfortunately,
I was in Georgia, missed it. Now she's lived in Robbinsville like her whole life, and of course earthquakes happen all the time, but usually it takes pretty sensitive equipment to even detect them. If you're moving around or in a car, you wouldn't notice. And I heard a few people that said that they were in a car and they didn't pick up on it. So, but yeah, the fact that Lori felt it all the way over in Robbinsville and the epicenter was over this way, right?
Yeah, and we'll go by and show you as close as we can get to where the epicenter was. It was a magnitude 4.1. Which is pretty significant for this area because everything else is pretty low, like below a 2. And they say if it's below 2 that you don't really feel it too much, but this one definitely shook things up.
And the thing that tripped me out was how many people said the sound was what was wild, and you heard it all the way over there, a pretty loud noise for quite a long time, right?
Yeah, so we'll get a little intimate with this detail.
I was in the loo.
Yeah, so
I was in the water closet.
So I was at the loo or the water closet, as Daryl saying. And it was at 9:04 in the morning, and I heard a rumbling, and I thought, okay, that's the storms coming through. It's supposed to storm today. Whatever, no big deal. But the sound was not tapering off or dissipating. It was actually growing in strength, it seemed like. And I'm like, okay, that's not thunder. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's the military helicopters coming back over because they had been doing training exercises and had flown over at 11:30 the night before and kind of rattled the house some, but it's only for a few seconds while they pass by and the sound, tapers in and then tapers out. But the sound was still increasing. I'm like, are they landing on our house in the yard?
Yeah, this was a sound that was a little different from what you're used to hearing, and it lasted like 20 seconds. I wonder, one of the things I heard pretty commonly was I went outside. I wonder if there was any prior sort of event that brought as many people out of their house at one time as that moment in this 100-mile radius. I mean, it really reached quite a ways out. And it sure brought a lot of people out of their house, it sounds like.
Yeah, so given the state I was in and the room I was in, it took me a moment to be able to get outside and try to figure out what was going on, because once I deemed, okay, this is not helicopters, my next thought was, okay, the ground is floor's starting to shake underneath me. I can hear the house rattling. The dogs are going nuts. And I'm like, they say a tornado sounds like a freight train. This can't be a tornado.
Was it cloudy at all outside or rainy or anything?
It was overcast, but none of the storms had gotten close to us yet. And, so I'm kind of freaking out.
Hang on. Here's a spot where a tree fell last week, I guess. And it was all the way across the road. I'm surprised I can see where they've cleaned the ditches out, but they left that there. A couple of spots on the way through looked like they had hit them. Yeah, like right here. So I don't know. I'm sure they've got plans. Maybe it takes a different crew to come in with chainsaws to cut that up. But yeah, you were saying that basically it took you a minute to get outside, I guess, because of where you were at.
Yeah, and I thought it was like a tornado, so I start rushing because the house is shaking. There's this rumbling that's just increasing in sound. And by the time I can get out and I'm looking outside, okay, there's no wind blowing, so it's not a tornado. And I start looking out towards neighbors' houses, and I can see other people outside just kind of looking up at the sky, wondering what in the world just went on. And my neighbor messages me in that moment just the word earthquake. And I'm like, are you for real? I mean, it took me a little bit to start wrapping my mind around it, that wow. It's like that.
Felt one.
Yeah, I'd never felt one before. And I know a 4.1 to people in areas of like California and everything, that's not a big...
Probably like, whatever.
It's like, man, that's child's play. But for us, that was really significant. And I can only imagine how much more
intense
it
had to have been if you were over here, because where we live, it's quite a ways. It takes us, so to get to that spot, the epicenter, it would take us about an hour, probably like 50 minutes, 50 minutes to get from our house to the other side of the Dragon and down by the lakes. It takes about 30 to get to the store, 15, 20 to get across the Dragon if you're not, held up. Oh, that's a new black mark. So that's pretty wild that it reached that far away.
So the epicenter of it was really close to the Dragon, actually. It was between the Dragon and the Foothills Parkway. And they did end up having some temporary closures at the Foothills Parkway to check the bridges and that sort of thing. Everything has been deemed safe. No damage that has been accounted for. So we're all good. We all survived the earthquake of 2025.
Yeah, that's back open. Anybody that thinks the parkway's closed, it's open. It was just a temporary thing.
And then the next weekend, on May 17th, in the early hours of Saturday morning, there was some pretty gnarly storms rolled through with heavy rains and high winds. And that's some of the damage or aftermath that we're seeing now as we're driving through. And the most significant part is what we're coming up on right now at 4.5, which is this landslide that happened. And, hats off to the DOT guys for getting out here really quick and getting that cleared out of the way and keeping the flow of traffic moving.
Yeah, they had to shut the road down for a minute, but it was pretty quick. They got it back open, within a couple hours or something, so that was cool.
Yeah.
Coming up on the cruise here, obviously, we got signs saying one-lane road and stuff, so probably gonna be coming to a stop here in a second. So, boy, Jack.
Yeah, so the crews are out kind of still cleaning up a little bit of the aftermath and the washout from the ditches that happens as a result of these heavy rains that come through. Peeking around the corner.
Yeah, I'm expecting to come up on stop to traffic any second here with the flagger sign back there, so I don't, any blind turn, you don't want to go faster than your braking distance is, because it could be a vehicle stopped like right there.
Yeah, so these heavy rains, when they come through, it can take a little bit of time for the water to fully drain from the higher elevations. So just because the rain has stopped doesn't necessarily mean that the water flow is going to stop. It might actually increase for a little bit before it starts dissipating and going down.
Yeah.
So be watchful of these ditch lines and the leaves and debris that may be washed out that wasn't there, a few minutes or an hour or so before.
Around the area, just driveways and stuff. Not all of it's about the Dragon, but the other roads around here, the driveways will wash gravel out into the road if it rains real hard. And it can be, like she said, like the day or two later is when it's the worst. It takes a while for that water to run down off the hills and really you start to accumulate.
In spite or despite the weather being a little damp, that hasn't stopped the folks from coming out and having fun the past couple weekends. And even today looked like it was pretty hopping around the stores whenever we came through. One of the groups that we had in the area was the Zorks. Still just tripping over that name. I love it. And it was really cool seeing the new Z cars mixing it up with the older model Z cars. It's like they're distant cousins. To me, they don't really look that much alike. It's like almost a totally different car, I think.
Well, they tried to do some retro stuff, though, with the new Z car, with the straight tail lights that have that sort of cyberpunk look from back in the 90s. And there's some touches to the car that suggest retro styling. But yeah, I like the way that I'm not real crazy about them from the factory stock, but that's the case with a lot of stuff with me. But you do a couple of things to them. Put some fat little tires and wheels on them, get them lowered just a little bit, maybe some aero bodywork pieces or something, and I think they look really cool. And they have a lot of potential for, being a good performing vehicle, I'm sure. Good balance and all that.
And then we had the MR2s here, showed up with some really clean rides. For those cars to be kind of as old as they are at this point, is really impressive to see how nicely done and kept that they were. So I'm very impressed by those guys.
Yeah.
And the S2000s were here for their Rock the Dragon rally. The earthquake was the weekend before, and that was just like the Dragon shaking and trembling with anticipation of the S2000s being here. So it was already kind of getting its socks rocked, kind of getting the party going before those guys got into town.
Yeah.
And the Lotus versus the Dragon group had a really impressive turnout this year. We saw so many Lotuses running around. We enjoyed or had a love for those cars from very early on when they first hit the market. Just fascinating looking little cars.
Well, they're all about add weight savings, and so they're very lightweight. That's what they're all about. So there's a flagger sign there. So they may be out for lunch or something.
Hey.
Is that? That was Dan and Tina. That was Dan and Tina, and they just got their Miata. So Dan just went and got himself a new car. That's
Congrats,
too cool.
Dan.
This right here is where people want to cut across.
And we got to spend the day with the Motor Enclave group again this year. Love spending time with those guys and gals and their amazing cars that they bring. They never disappoint with the exotics.
Yeah, they've got some really cool rides.
And the local in the area that they had kind of organizing the drives for them, really?
Got it. You can say his name. Brett Malacolin. If I'm saying that right. There's a new set of those double black marks, by the way. You seeing that?
No.
It's like it's something that's coming through repeatedly. Those double black marks I was talking about last week. Huh. They're like they're being put again in the road. Something's coming through here that's leaving those. But
I wonder if it's the trailers, like where they're hauling in the equipment to do like work up here.
But I swear it looks like a flat tire line or something. But anyway, yeah, he helped sort of tour guide the group that we were hired to shoot, and we got some cool video of those guys and photos of them. But we ended up going on a pretty special road that it's not super hidden, like a lot of people are familiar with it, but we just had never been on it over in Knoxville. really, really beautiful drive through the forest. So yeah, tell about that a little bit.
So the surprise road was the Roaring Fork Motor Trail in the Gatlinburg area.
Roaring, that's a hard word to spit it out. Roaring, Roaring, roaring like a lion.
And it is a 5.5 mile one-way loop through an old growth forest. It's like hiking through Joyce Kilmer, but being able to drive your car.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Feels a little sacrilegious though, it's like maybe you should just park the car and get out and walk, but I guess it's kind of a long one and not everybody would be able to do it or want to do it. So that felt a little weird, but it's a one lane. Stay in your freaking lane, speaking of lanes. It's a one lane, one way road that it's a ribbon of pavement laid right through the forest.
But it's a really cool trail, or drive rather. It's a cruise. You get to see some primitive cabins, historic buildings, and there's even some hiking trails where you can kind of get out, walk to some waterfalls, but parking is limited, so maybe earlier in the morning might be a better time to check that out. So the BMW MOA, Motorcycle Owners of America, has recently announced their partnership with Fontana Village, naming it a premier destination, and it is the only premier destination in the Southeast.
Cool.
If you're a member, you get some exclusive benefits with the village, and it's pretty interesting that the BMW MOA was founded over 50 years ago, and it was a group of 5 friends that just wanted to create a group or a club so they could stay in contact with each other. And that has grown to include over 25,000 other members across all 50 states and 10 Canadian provinces. They have members from all around the world at this point.
I bet you those guys never expected it to be like that, when they formed that thing, that it would blow up that big. That's cool.
To me, that speaks volumes about the touring bike community and how much of a network they are and help each other out and just all about having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I love it.
We helped shoot the video. So they did they wanted an announcement video. Sudden. I'd gotten lazy and thought we were out of it. They wanted an announcement video shot, so they hired us to come down and basically do a talking head video. And I think it turned out pretty good. That's not usually our thing. I didn't feel like we had the equipment and knowledge on how to do it before, but I felt pretty good about the results of what we got. And so yeah, we posted it up on our YouTube channel. Some of you may have already seen it, but we'll post it up in the comment or in the description too. You guys let us know what you think about the video.
And when you're in the area, be sure to stop by the Dam Garage at Fontana Village and check out the BMW motorcycles that they have on display. You can even enter to win a GS 1300 BMW bike that's being given away by Roadrunner magazine. They've got a kiosk right there. It's very simple to put your information in, and bam! Next thing you know, you could have a new bike sitting in your garage. And what's going to be happening as you're watching this podcast, it's going to be Memorial Day weekend, and there's not a whole lot going on the Tell of the Dragon event calendar. The only thing of note is going to be the 44th installment of the Dragon Rally by Smoky Mountain Drives. And also, this isn't on their calendar, but it's something else happening in the area. Is going to be the 39th annual Fading Voices Demonstration Day in Graham County. And this is a celebration of the traditional ways of the snowbird Cherokees. And some of the demonstrations they're going to be doing is going to be pottery making, wood carving, basket weaving, traditional dancing, stickball, which is pretty cool to watch if you've never watched that. I got to watch it as a kid.
Yeah, we might go check some of this stuff out. I haven't ever seen that. It's a little short notice, by the time you see this, but if you're in the area and you're able to check it out, I think it could be some pretty interesting to watch them do that live. Mm-hmm. All those things,
And it's a little bit of history and culture of the area that's not motorcycle related, but it's still fascinating stuff. And if you want more information on events like that that's coming up, be sure to check out the Graham County, North Carolina Facebook page or grahamcountytravel.com, and they'll have stuff like there's an Azalea Festival coming up next month, which we'll tell you more about that in a future podcast. And then
I said cool, sorry.
And then coming up after that, the following weekend, May 29th to June 1st, we're going to have the All-American Camaro and Firebird Association. The Fiats and Alphas on the Dragon will be here for their spring meet. And then on May 31st, the Bug and the Dragon crew is going to be back for their 7th drive through the Dragon in their air-cooled VWs.
That'd be cool. Yeah, those guys, you can't hardly keep those things stock. You have to like upgrade them to just be able to keep it running because they don't make the parts hardly anymore. So they're all really cool custom machines. There'll be I'm sure some rail buggies and some interesting designs and applications of, customization on some of the Beetles and things like that. They got the buses, the trucks, the little mini milk trucks and stuff. So it's going to be a cool show to watch those guys. It always is.
They're always so individualized, and each car has so much personality. Maybe the car's personality matches the owner's personality
for sure,
too.
Yeah, for sure. Same with my stuff, our stuff. We've got our own style of things and ways we like to do things, and it's cool to be friends with people like Justin at Atlanta Custom Wraps that helps us sort of do fun things with our vehicles, and we've got some cool ideas for what I want to do next with this car. Matter of fact, that's going to be happening soon, so stay tuned for that. Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend, those are two of the busiest weekends. And some people sometimes say, assume that like July 4th is a super busy weekend. It's not. Those are like family weekends, and people plan things to do, together with their spouse or their family and their, children or whatever. But something about Memorial Day, Labor Day, it's like a me day, and it's a time for people to go out and do sort of what they want to do for themselves. And so we see a lot of traffic. It's also a Monday holiday, so like a Friday might be a little unusually slow, but the Sunday, where it would normally be a little bit slower because everybody's going to work on Monday, when you have that holiday on a Monday like that, then Sunday becomes the Saturday, so to speak. It's quite busy. So Saturday and Sunday will be busy, and then people will start heading home Monday to be at work the following and stuff like that. So Memorial Day, even though there's not much on the calendar, it will be one of the busier weekends if tradition holds from the past 20 years that we will see. Yeah.
And the area that we're going through right now is very close to the epicenter of the earthquake. Yeah, we just passed it. Yeah, where
that big pull-off was.
Coming up, if you've traveled to and from the Dragon from the north, you may or may have not noticed this rock face here with all the, the netting over it.
So we're here, we're going to hop out and give you a little info about this area and what it has to do with the state line. Check it out. This rock wall, you might be asking, like, what does this have to do with a chain link fence up at the state line that's like 12 miles, 13 miles away? She's got a little info here. She came with receipts, as they say, okay? As in notes. So what you got?
So on March 14th, 2010, that's been a minute, been a little while ago.
What was I doing?
What were you doing? You were on your way to play paintball. Pew, 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 pew.
It's because all guns have two triggers, right? Hey, I got one that's got two triggers. It's got a grenade launcher and the regular thing on it for airsoft. But anyway, yeah, I was coming through to play paintball when this all happened.
Yeah, so you were met with a unexpected roadblock when you were on your way over to play paintball with friends. Thankfully, he documented everything pretty well on the old blog, which is where I was able to go back and pull a lot of this information from.
Nice.
And so
modern problems require modern solutions. Write shit down.
Yeah, it's like you had the solution even before you knew that you needed it to be a solution. So there were several large boulders, several tons of rocks fell during the night, and there was no earthquakes during the time that we're aware of. I think Daryl had come through the night before with his base.
That's probably what
a little too high.
My bad. My bad.
There's the big rock slide covering both lanes. There's a film crew here. There's cops, and it was one of the most viral videos before videos were going viral.
Yeah.
Of a guy. He was so distracted by the cops and the TV crew that he runs his car right into the rock slide, not even seeing it.
And he had a dog in the car. I felt bad for him. If you look up like rock slide crash, Blount County, you'll find the video also. But yeah, the guy was okay. Dog was okay. A little shook up. It's a lesson learned about distraction and staying focused on the road. You can't just go around blaming everybody else.
So while Daryl's here, on the other side of the slide, the rocks and everything in the road, you can see in the background of the photos that they're actually loading the guy's car onto the rollback. And I think it took about an hour once you and Brian got here to have to wait for it to get cleared. And they had a lane cleared pretty quickly within about an hour, and traffic was able to pass, back and forth. And even later that evening, Daryl was able to make it back home without having to go the long way around. But that night, they ended up closing the road back down due to concerns of instability in the rock face. What they thought would be a few days to a couple weeks ended up turning into months of the road being closed.
Because they had to get in and stabilize it. So we'll get some footage of it and you can see them. They put in these rods and stuff. They put in this fencing to help catch the rocks if they start to tumble, to keep it from hitting too hard and causing more to fall. These fences are just like big wet blankets laying over things, and they're kind of open at the top so that the rocks can sort of funnel in behind the fence and stay tight to it and not end up out in the road, not end up causing more to fall. But they also drove a bunch of, reinforcements into the rocks to help keep it from, being a further problem because of the instability. But I think when they started moving things away, more started falling, and it became an issue there as well, made it more difficult to clean up.
And they pretty quickly realized that this, like you said, is going to take longer to clean up, and barricades were put up. You could not get through from the Tennessee side or the North Carolina side, and they had the Dragon closed down completely. But there were several businesses in the area reaching out to the authorities about the financial impact this was going to have, not just on the businesses immediately at the Dragon, but in the area in general, because that's the draw to the place.
Yeah, the issue was that they blocked the Dragon. They blocked 129 all the way down at 28. So down where Deals Gap Motorcycle Resort, Tell the Dragon, Killboy store are, they were detouring traffic there for a rock slide that was way over here. So because they blocked it at 28 for a rock slide that was all the way over here off the Dragon, 3 miles north of the Dragon, it shut down that road, and people would come for the other roads too. But when people heard that the Dragon was closed, they were canceling their trips. And this was at the beginning of the season when all the business had just come off of the off season. Finances are lean. We're trying to get started back up again. Now we're being told it's going to be 3 months of no tourism. So some, statements were made, some protests, and
one of the ones that I had forgotten about was until I was reading through the old blogs, was the Dills Gap Rotary Rally actually started a petition, and it was openus129.com.
Oh, cool. So they registered a website and everything.
Which is, nothing's no longer there. The links don't work or anything. But it was really cool that those guys, along with the area businesses, stepped up and
put pressure on the powers that be to come up with a better solution than just shutting the whole thing down. So
and it worked.
Yeah, so the issue, and to be fair, it's a tricky situation because of the state line. You know, you've got Tennessee, you know, the dragon itself is in Tennessee. So after you cross the state line. So how do you get it so that they can have medical service, they can have law enforcement services up there keeping things sane when you can't get Tennessee through this spot right here because it was blocked? So they came up with an agreement that said basically Tennessee agreed to pay 2 state troopers on like voluntary overtime, if I'm not mistaken, to drive all the way around the Cherry Hill Skyway, come in from Robbinsville, and open a gate at the state line at 8 a.m. And stay on the Dragon until 8 p.m. And so when you came in from the North Carolina side into Tennessee, you had to turn around and go back. So, you know, Tennessee agreed, okay, we'll put 2 state troopers up there to keep an eye on the road and keep things sane if you'll provide medical coverage for any incidents from North Carolina over into Tennessee. And so they agreed to do that. So there for a few months, like 3 months.
Yeah, from April until July.
Mid-April to mid-July. It was cool, but it was weird. It was eerie because there was very little non-enthusiast traffic. It was kind of cool that you had mostly enthusiasts. There was a few obviously lost souls up there that just had to turn around and go back. They didn't understand, you know, what was going on. But, you know, the locals that would normally run back and forth knew you couldn't get across, so they weren't coming through. And they had signage up that said that the road was closed ahead, so people who were just traveling, commuting through the area to get from A to B were turned away or detoured because they could see that the road was closed. So all you had left was enthusiasts on the road. It was a pretty interesting time. So yeah, it was just opened at 8 a.m. and then they would go to the far end of the blockage, and then the state troopers, and then they would sweep the whole road up to the state line and then close the gates at 8 p.m. at night. And it wasn't without a couple of incidents. I don't know all of them, but I did hear from firsthand from someone who had to deal with this situation. There was a situation where I think somebody was supposed to clear Parsons Branch. So there's one gravel one-way road that comes into the Dragon from Cades Cove. And apparently there was an elderly couple that was still on that road when they closed the gate at the state line, which created a dead end. I mean, they couldn't, you know, legally they weren't allowed to go back the gravel road. It's a one-way road. So they came out into the Dragon, and it was gated at both ends at that point at night. And they were trapped behind the gate at the state line. And luckily somebody that came up trying to get through didn't realize it was, you know, didn't read the signs or comprehend what it was saying. They, you know, met the couple at the gate on the other side, and it was explained to them what was happening. He needed didn't he have diabetes or something? Like,
yeah.
He needed some insulin. And so they went back and called for help, and, you know, they came up and cut the gate or something and got them out. So there was a couple of incidents like that, but it was a weird time for sure.
And an interesting thing with it that is TDOT awarded a $1.99 million emergency repair contract to a demolition company, and the original estimated completion date was July 31st. And they had an incentive of $6,500 per day to complete that work early.
Sooner, nice.
Yeah. And they ended up being able to complete the cleanup and get the road fully reopened by July 14th. So they kind of snuck in a bit under their deadline and was awarded some of that incentive to get the road open earlier.
Month early? Was that a month early? What did you say the deadline was?
July 31st.
Oh, okay. So a couple of weeks, yeah. I wonder why they picked 1.99. They must have had a cap of 2 million, so they said, okay, we'll make it 1.99. That's kind of funny. Odd number.
Yeah, it's like maybe whenever they were doing the bidding for the contract, one company's like, we'll do it for 2, and this other one's like, well, we'll do it for 1.99.
Like Price is Right. You come in, lowest number wins. But you can't see what the other person has bidded, so you just assume that they bidded 2, so we're going to do 1.99. Yeah, that's probably what happened, actually. That's funny.
And then 2 years later, almost to the day, there was another landslide near the 10-mile marker on the Dragon itself. And that kind of closed the northern end of the Dragon, but since how they already had experience because of the slide that happened here, they were still allowing folks to come in from the North Carolina side, and they were being turned around by the troopers at the Overlook and sent back out, but they had the emergency services set up again and
did that same routine, I guess. How long did that last? Was the road closed for that one?
Only 6 days.
Yeah, it was mostly like a dirt type of landslide, more like a mudslide. It wasn't so much rock, so maybe that made it easier.
Then they ended up hauling out, 80 plus dump truck loads of earth, and they even cut it back a little bit and did a similar mesh over that area, which you can no longer see now. The mesh is still there, but you have to be really paying attention and know where to look to see it because there's so much growth of trees and foliage up through it that you can't even see that anymore.
Yeah, it's more like a dirt surface, so the plants grew and grew through the fencing.
So that's going to kind of wrap for this week's history lesson. And with that, we're going to roll into a little bit of tech talk and let Daryl tell you about some of his favorite pieces of equipment that he likes to use frequently on shoots.
Stay right there. We'll be right back. All right. So this is my little bag, my little satchel. Indiana Jones had one. So in here, I keep a couple of drones. So this little guy right here is really cool. This is the DJI Neo. This thing is like $199. It's got a 4K small camera. You can fly it with your cell phone. I can actually use my goggles from my other FPV drone that I'm about to get out in a second. But this thing is so cool, and so I'll show you.
Close. Follow. 3, 2, 1.
So I don't know if you can see that, but I can walk around and it'll follow me. Should I walk around? I'll walk around. So let's see what it looks like. Come on, little Neo. So if you got a little audio going, you can just have your own little personal cameraman and be like, okay guys, over here you can see the rock slide, and we'll cut to the footage from this thing. So we got video coming from this Neo also. But yeah, you can just walk around and it'll follow you. It's like you have your own little personal cameraman. And yeah, it's super cool. I think it's really neat for $199. There are some issues that people have had with them flying away and whatnot. And then when you're done, you're ready for it to land, you just put your hand out under it and it lands. There it is. I think it's really cool. So I don't use this one very much. It's very affected by the wind. It's not very strong. It's not a great outdoor drone. It's more of an indoor drone, but it works outdoors as long as it's calm, obviously, like today. And like I said, I can pair it up to my goggles and stuff and manually control this also. So, but the main thing I want to talk about is the Avata 2 here. Now, I recommend this to a lot of people who are looking to get into FPV drones or just drones in general. A lot of people who don't fly drones would think something like this would be harder to fly than like a traditional Mavic with a screen, and I would disagree. This type of setup makes it easier to tell where the drone is at. In particular, you get a real sense of situational awareness around the machine. And it comes with, I don't think I have it in here. No, it comes, normally it's $1,200 for the drone, the goggles, and a little controller that's very intuitive. It's a gyroscopic little joystick, and you just lean it to get it to rotate. You squeeze the trigger to get it to go, and it will not move unless you pull the trigger on that controller. So this thing is super easy to fly. I'll put this in the hands of anybody that even hasn't ever flown a drone, and they'll always say, I'm gonna crash it. And I'm like, you will not crash it, I guarantee you, and no one ever has. So with that controller, it stays in one place. These things are GPS-based flight. So what that means is it's getting GPS coordinates at all times. It's also looking at the ground, and so it can tell when it's moving and sort of stays in place. And it has, basically it's locked on to X, Y, and Z coordinates until I tell it to move. So I explain it this way to people. I'm not really flying the drone per se. I am moving a point in space, and then this drone is going to that point. And if I tell it to go here, and then I grab this drone and pull it, it'll go right back to here. It's always trying to go to a specific point. And that's how this type of FPV system works. Now, the racing style of FPVs, they don't use GPS based, and they're just manually controlled, and they're very fast and very agile. And those are advanced level, that's top line. But this is actually really easy to fly. It's got guards, it's not bulletproof. I have damaged one of these, but for the most part, you can bounce into things and it's fine. And I've used this to play around with getting footage in front of the store, out at the Tail of the Dragon. I was playing around with it last weekend up on the side of the road while I was hanging out with one of the photographers and just getting some footage of some of the random people going by in a very undistracting way. You know, a lot of people ask me, do I film people chasing them with the drone through the Dragon? And I really don't. That was one of the first times I've ever really shot anybody on the Dragon with the drone. And I just stayed out of sight until they passed by, and then I would try to follow them for a little bit. They never knew I was there. But you definitely don't want to be distracting on a road like that where people are already, you know, on the edge of crashing. So, but yeah, this is highly recommended for, like I said, 4K 60 frame per second camera, really good goggles. They have a battery built into the strap. If you do get goggles, common mistake, and I'm doing it right now, do not let the lenses point to the sun. They are magnifiers, and on the other side of those lenses is an LCD screen, and they can pinpoint the sun into the screen. And I have a pair of goggles that are damaged because I let them stay pointed at the sun too long, and it burnt a bad spot into the lenses, or into the LCD screen in the front. So don't let them lay down and point at the sun for any amount of time. Try to keep them shaded. You can get covers and stuff like that that go on the inside just to keep light from entering the screens. But I think it's a really cool kit. Right now, it's probably one of the easiest drones to fly on the market. Super easy to fly if you're looking to get into drones, especially if you're looking to get into FPV, but even if you're not. This thing takes great video, great photos. It's a little bit susceptible to wind, so it'll be up there sort of, you know, hanging tight because these guards are like sails. But it does make it a lot safer for a beginning flyer than the open props on most drones, and it allows you to make a few mistakes and not necessarily end up with a crash drone. So yeah, DJI Avata 2. I'll put a link in the comments, and that's it for today's Tech Talk. All right, y'all, that does it for this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for all of your support, and interacting with the video in some kind of way helps us not have to use clickbait, thumbnails, titles, all that stuff. We'd appreciate it if you guys like it, comment, subscribe, do something with the video. It helps us out a lot. And we want to thank some of our fellow supporters and businesses in the area that we work with as well. So take it away.
And remember to check out tailofthedragon.com and their event calendar to see what's coming up in the area. Check out Fontana Village. Drop by and enter for a chance to win that awesome BMW bike. Check out grahamcountytravel.com if you want to get some other culture while you're here in the area. And as always, Killboy.com for your dragon photos. Till next time, peace. Bye.
Not sponsored. Got to record. I wasn't sure where to put it when you were talking, so like over here I felt like it was more like my big head was in the corner. Whoa. So like we'll put it over here for you when you talk. Put it over here. Follow the camera. Follow the camera. Ready? Whoa. Whoa. Hey baby. Peace.
Bye, little Mike.